My name is Daniel Rivera, and I grew up in Queens. If someone had told me back in high school that one day I'd be mixed up with Wall Street brokers, insider trading, and the FBI, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, the stock market wasn't just foreign to me, it was another planet. My world was simpler, closer to the ground. I was the kid who figured out how to rig fairy lights for school dances, who stayed late stacking chairs after pep rallies because I liked the feeling of pulling an event together. Somehow, that knack for creating atmosphere became my career, a corporate event planner in Manhattan. It wasn't glamorous. The job meant endless phone calls, frantic negotiations with caterers, and nights where I lugged crates of glassware until my arms went numb. I wasn't a Wall Street hotshot with a penthouse. I was a guy in a cramped one-bedroom off Roosevelt Avenue, scraping by, proud when I could pay rent on time. My job wasn't about glory. It was about making other people look important while staying invisible in the background. The spotlight was never meant for me. And yet, life has a way of shoving you into places you never imagined. For me, it all started with one overheard conversation. It was the early 2000s, and I was setting up a holiday party for a mid-sized tech firm in Midtown. Picture gold table linens, a jazz trio crooning "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," executives laughing too loudly at the bar. I was behind a partition, checking the schedule, when two men walked in. Suits, ties, voices lowered, but not low enough. One said casually, "1,000 jobs cut." The other just nodded, like he was deciding between red or white wine. My pen froze above the clipboard. They had no idea I was standing 10 feet away. My heart thudded. 1,000 people, gone, like erasing a line from a spreadsheet. That night, I went home, but I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing the ripple effect, mortgages unpaid, families blindsided, kids asking why Dad was suddenly home at noon. At 5 in the morning, I gave up and opened my old laptop. Out of nothing but curiosity, I looked up the company's stock ticker. Numbers don't usually mean much to me, but something about that neat little graph held me. The next afternoon, the news went public. Company announces restructuring, 1,000 employees laid off. And just like that, the stock price nosedived. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting, because I realized something that shook me. If I'd acted on what I overheard, just a simple bet in the market, I could have walked away with more money than I'd ever made in a year of event planning. I closed the laptop, but the thought wouldn't leave me. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't even a numbers guy. But once you see how the game is played, once you realize that whispers in a ballroom can move millions on Wall Street, it plants a seed. And that night, somewhere deep inside me, the seed of temptation cracked open. The first time I met Michael Caine, I wasn't thinking about money, markets, or even that whisper of temptation from the tech firm party. I was just doing my job, setting up another lavish corporate celebration, this time for a Wall Street firm's anniversary gala. By then, I'd worked dozens of these events. They all blurred together in my head. Shiny suits, expensive liquor, and executives congratulating themselves under chandeliers that cost more than my annual rent. That night, the ballroom at the Waldorf glowed like something out of a movie. Ice sculptures, string quartets, and a guest list that read like a who's who of finance. To me, though, it was another paycheck and another long night. I was standing at the bar, checking that the staff had enough clean glasses, when I noticed him. Michael Caine. He was different from the others. Where most of the brokers looked stiff in their tuxedos, Michael wore his like armor, confident, effortless. He had this grin that reminded me of a shark, sharp, dangerous, but strangely magnetic, the kind of man you didn't forget after a first glance. He caught me watching, and instead of brushing me off like most of these guys did, he raised his glass and said, "Rough night?" His voice was smooth, the kind of tone that makes you want to lean in, even if you know better. I chuckled. You could say that, but hey, at least the band showed up on time. That broke the ice. We talked more as the night went on. Unlike most Wall Street types, he didn't treat me like invisible staff. He asked about my work, about the craziness of planning events for people who had more money than common sense. He laughed at my stories, like the one about the CEO who demanded an ice sculpture shaped like a dolphin, then complained it looked too wet. The conversation flowed easily, and by the end of the night, I realized I actually liked this guy. He had an edge, sure, but he also had charisma. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, we kept in touch. Drinks after work, late night dinners, conversations that lasted hours. He seemed fascinated by how much I picked up just by being around corporate elites, how many careless secrets slipped out when people were drunk and comfortable. One night, sitting in a dark bar downtown, I told him about the tech firm party, about how I'd overheard the layoffs and later watched the stock crash. I expected him to laugh or maybe roll his eyes. Instead, he went quiet. His grin faded, and for a moment, he looked at me like I'd just handed him a winning lottery ticket. "You know what that is, Danny," he finally said. I frowned. "What?" "Insider information. That's gold." The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. I hesitated, swirling the last of my drink. "So, what if we actually did something with it? You and me?" For a second, I thought he'd shut me down. He leaned back, shook his head, and said, "Too risky. You go to jail for that." His tone was final, but his eyes told a different story. The seed had been planted. A week later, my phone rang. Michael's voice on the line was calm, casual, but I could hear something different in it, a hunger. "Let's try one deal," he said. "Just one." And that's how it began. The night I met Michael Caine, I had no idea that I just stepped onto a path that would change my life forever. Our first deal felt almost unreal, like we'd slipped into a secret world that no one else could see. It started the same way as before, me standing in the corner of a ballroom while executives toasted their own brilliance. This time it was a manufacturing company. The CFO, 2 glasses of wine deep, leaned in close to a colleague and muttered about losing a massive government contract. The words were quick, almost casual, but to me, they rang like alarm bells. The next morning, I told Michael. His eyes lit up. "That's solid," he said, already reaching for his laptop. Within minutes, he was making trades, moving money like a magician shuffling cards. I watched him, my heart pounding, as if the walls around us might suddenly sprout cameras. For the next few days, I barely slept. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it was the police. Every time I turned a corner, I expected someone in a dark suit to be waiting. Then, at the end of the week, Michael called. His voice was calm, but underneath it was a crackle of excitement. "We did it, Danny. 250 grand. I laughed out loud, disbelieving. My cut was 50,000, more money than I'd ever seen at once in my entire life. Rent, bills, debts, all of it wiped clean in a heartbeat. I held the envelope in my hands, my fingers trembling, the paper thick with possibility. We swore it would be the last time. Just one deal, easy money, and then back to our normal lives. But deep down, I think both of us knew we were lying. Once you taste that kind of power, the ability to turn whispers into cash, it's impossible to forget. That was the moment we crossed the line, and once you cross it, there's no going back. After that first win, it was like someone had flipped a switch inside me. The fear didn't vanish, but it became background noise, like the hum of an air conditioner you stop noticing after a while. Every new event I organized turned into an opportunity. Executives loosened their ties, clinked glasses, and bragged when they thought no one important was listening. I became a sponge, soaking up secrets they spilled after midnight. Michael was the engine. I'd hand him the information, and he'd turn it into money with a few keystrokes. Our profits multiplied, first thousands, then hundreds of thousands. By the end of the year, I was living a life I never imagined. I bought my mom a house in Queens, paid off my own debts, and swapped my beat-up Honda for a new black BMW. Michael, of course, went bigger. Vegas weekends, champagne showers, and cars that looked like they belonged in action movies. But it wasn't just the money, it was the thrill. We weren't gambling like everyone else in the market. We knew the outcomes. Every successful trade made me feel like we were untouchable, like the rules didn't apply to us. And that's a dangerous feeling. I told myself we were just smart, just resourceful. But late at night, lying in bed, I sometimes felt a gnawing unease. Each score made us bolder, sloppier, hungrier. Instead of asking if we should do it, the question became, how far can we go? We didn't realize it yet, but we were already digging our own graves, one champagne toast at a time. The first real scare came in 2004. Michael's contact, a jittery trader who owed him favors, mentioned over drinks that the SEC was sniffing around a suspicious pattern of trades. He laughed it off, but I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Suspicious pattern? That sounded way too close to home. Michael just waved his hand, saying, "Relax, Danny. They'll never connect the dots. Too many players, too much noise." His confidence was infectious, but it didn't erase the unease crawling under my skin. Still, we pressed on. Bigger deals, riskier moves. Yet something in Michael started to shift. He wasn't the same slick, composed guy I first met. He grew reckless, impatient. Sometimes he jumped on half-baked rumors instead of waiting for solid information. When trades hit, he partied harder. When they didn't, he drowned himself in scotch and poker chips. I remember one night in Atlantic City. We were holed up in a suite, stacks of chips scattered across the table, when he suddenly snapped at me. "You wouldn't even be here without me, Danny. Don't forget that." His face was red, his hands shaking. I just sat there, stunned, staring at the man who'd once been my partner, my friend. That night, as I lay awake in the hotel bed, a thought crept in. Maybe this wouldn't last. Maybe we were on borrowed time. But greed has a way of silencing reason. By morning, Michael was back to his charming self, cracking jokes over breakfast as if nothing happened. I told myself it was just stress. But deep down, I knew. The cracks were spreading, and it was only a matter of time before the glass shattered. The end came faster than I ever imagined. By 2006, we were riding higher than ever. Our last score was massive, $500,000 in profit in a single week. I remember sitting in Michael's apartment, sipping expensive whiskey, convinced we had cracked some secret code of life. We weren't just lucky, we were masters of the game. That's what I told myself. But that illusion shattered the morning the FBI knocked on my door. I'll never forget it. 2 sharp knocks, then the sound of fists pounding like they already owned the place. When I opened it, suits, badges, and cold stares filled the doorway. My chest froze. It felt like the world had finally caught up to me. They had everything. Phone records, emails, trading logs. Turns out, one of the executives we'd overheard months earlier was already under investigation, and our trades lit up their charts like fireworks. Suddenly, we weren't clever anymore. We were sloppy criminals with a trail a mile long. The weeks that followed blurred into endless interrogations and courtroom shadows. Michael tried to put on his old shark grin, but I could see the fear in his eyes. The walls were closing in, and the empire we'd built was nothing but smoke. When the prosecutors offered a deal, lighter sentences in exchange for cooperation, we cracked. We weren't legends, we weren't untouchable. We were just 2 scared men trying to salvage what little future we had left. I got 18 months, Michael got 2 years. For all the millions we moved, it ended with prison bars and shame. Just like that, the high life was gone. Prison wasn't the nightmare I'd imagined from movies. It wasn't all fights and shanks. It was worse in a quieter way. It was monotony. Days bled together. The same bland food, the same clanging doors, the same voices echoing in the halls. Time stretched, slow and merciless, forcing me to sit with the choices that had landed me there. I replayed every moment, every overheard whisper, every greedy decision, and wondered when exactly I had stopped being myself. I kept a low profile, no bravado, no stories about the money. To most of the guys inside, I was just the Wall Street event guy. a novelty who had played the system and lost. Some admired it, others sneered. Me, I just counted the days, clinging to the thought of freedom like a lifeline. When I finally walked out after 18 months, the world felt sharper, louder, but it wasn't the same. I wasn't the same. I tried to slip back into my old life, calling up clients, booking events, but word spreads fast in New York. Some people wouldn't touch me. Others only hired me out of curiosity, like I was some cautionary tale they could parade in front of guests. The work felt hollow, like I was pretending to be the man I used to be. I saw Michael once, not long after he got out. He looked older, heavier, his eyes dulled. The grin that once scared and inspired me was gone. We didn't talk much, just a nod, an unspoken acknowledgement of everything we'd lost. We'd both gambled our lives on greed, and the house had won. The world moved on, but for me, the shadow of those choices never really left. Looking back, it wasn't just about getting caught. The worst part wasn't prison, the fines, or losing money. It was losing myself. I went from a guy who planned parties to someone who exploited people's secrets for profit. Greed made every decision louder, every victory feel hollow, and every risk seemed smaller than it was. If there's one lesson in my story, it's this. Easy money always comes with a price, and it's rarely just dollars. The thrill fades, the risk catches up, and in the end, the game you thought you were winning is the one that wins. I survived, I paid my debt, and I returned to a quiet life. But I carry the memory of what I became and what I almost lost every single day.